On what seemed like an ordinary early morning at Liberty News' state-of-the-art studio in downtown New York City, nothing could have prepared the staff or the millions of viewers at home for the seismic event that was about to unfold. The studio, located in a modern high-rise equipped with massive LED panels, precision lighting, and cutting-edge broadcast gear, hummed with the usual energy of a busy weekday. Jessica Monroe, the channel's renowned liberal anchor celebrated for her fearless commentary and unwavering dedication to journalistic integrity, was in the midst of a routine news segment. Yet, beneath the polished veneer of the broadcast, an undercurrent of tension had been building for days. In recent weeks, heated debates had surged across social media about the actions of a controversial public figure, Caroline Leavitt, a name that had become synonymous with divisive policies and questionable decisions. As the segment shifted toward a discussion on accountability in public office and the responsibilities of influential figures, the atmosphere in the studio became palpably charged. Jessica's expression, usually a portrait of composed professionalism, now bore the unmistakable marks of inner turmoil. Then, in a moment that would forever change the course of that broadcast, Jessica locked eyes with the camera and, in a voice that resonated with raw conviction, declared, "Caroline Leavitt, your irresponsibility and betrayal of our core American ideals cannot be justified." The words rang out like a clarion call, shattering the controlled cadence of the live show. For a few interminable seconds, time itself appeared to freeze. In the control room, production assistants and camera operators exchanged wide-eyed glances, their hands momentarily faltering on the switches and faders. The director, sitting in the dim glow of the monitoring screens, struggled to regain command of the situation, while technicians scrambled to adjust audio levels that now carried an unmistakable charge of emotion. Within the studio, the shock was palpable. The usual murmur of hushed backstage conversations gave way to an eerie silence as colleagues tried to comprehend the gravity of what they had just witnessed. Jessica's face, illuminated by the bright studio lights, bore a look of fierce determination mixed with evident vulnerability. Every word that had poured from her lips was measured yet explosive, a declaration that not only criticized Caroline Leavitt's recent decisions but also served as an indictment of a system many felt had lost its moral compass. As the live broadcast continued, the impact of that singular comment began to ripple outward. Viewers across the nation, tuning in from their living rooms, smartphones, and workplaces, were thrust into a state of disbelief and astonishment. Social media platforms exploded with activity as users immediately began tweeting, posting, and debating the implications of Jessica's bold outburst. Hashtags such as #StandWithJessica and #AccountabilityNow quickly began trending, reflecting a nation divided between staunch support for the anchor's candor and vehement disapproval of what many considered an overstep of professional boundaries. The atmosphere in the studio had irrevocably shifted. Crew members who had once been focused solely on the mechanics of a flawless broadcast were now grappling with a mix of admiration, concern, and anxiety. Some veteran producers recalled earlier instances when the line between passionate reporting and overt bias had been perilously thin, but never before had the break been so dramatic and public. In the midst of the live feed, the tension in the air was so thick that even the ambient hum of the studio's air conditioning system seemed to fade into the background. Amid the technical commotion and frantic backstage signals to cut to a commercial break, Jessica's statement echoed in the minds of everyone present. She had not merely delivered an opinion, she had ignited a debate about the very nature of truth in modern journalism. Her choice of words, sharp, uncompromising, and unfiltered, was a deliberate challenge to the norms of balanced reporting. It was as if she had taken a decisive stand against a perceived injustice, fully aware that her every syllable would be dissected and debated by pundits, critics, and supporters alike. In the moments following that fateful utterance, the studio's production team attempted to re-establish a semblance of order. The director's urgent signals were met with rapid adjustments, as if the crew hoped that a simple change in camera angle might somehow erase the memory of the incendiary comment. Yet, the damage had been done. On every screen across America, Jessica Monroe's impassioned delivery was captured in high definition, leaving little room for misinterpretation. The image of her unwavering gaze, equal parts anger and sorrow, would soon become emblematic of a broader national conversation about the responsibilities of media figures in turbulent times. Backstage, whispers began to circulate among the staff. Some remembered previous segments where Jessica had hinted at underlying frustrations with the current state of political affairs, while others speculated that the pressure of internal debates within the newsroom had reached a breaking point. The sudden shift from composed professionalism to raw, unfiltered emotion was not lost on anyone. Even those who had long admired her dedication to delivering hard-hitting truths found themselves questioning whether this moment of passionate outburst had crossed an irrevocable line. For the viewers, the impact was equally profound. As social media erupted with real-time commentary, millions of Americans found themselves forced to confront the complex interplay between personal conviction and professional duty. Was Jessica's comment an act of brave honesty, an essential wake-up call to a complacent public, or was it an unfortunate lapse that betrayed the journalistic standards the station had long upheld? Across living rooms, workplaces, and online forums, the conversation quickly evolved into one that questioned not only the incident itself but the very role of media in shaping public discourse in an era dominated by instantaneous communication and viral outrage. In that singular, unforgettable moment, Liberty News and its iconic anchor had become the epicenter of a debate that stretched far beyond the confines of a television studio. The shock of the comment had set in motion a chain of events that would soon shake the very foundations of the network, challenging long-held norms about free expression, ethical responsibility, and the sometimes perilous intersection of personal passion with professional obligation. And as the broadcast continued, even as production teams struggled to regain control, one thing was clear: the world of American journalism had irrevocably changed, and the repercussions of that single defiant statement would be felt for a long time to come. Almost immediately after Jessica Monroe's incendiary remark cut through the live broadcast, the digital landscape across the United States erupted. Within moments, clips of the comment were being shared across social media platforms, from Twitter to Facebook, Instagram to Reddit, sparking a wildfire of discussion and debate among millions of users. In homes, offices, and on the go, everyday Americans found themselves immersed in a sea of rapid-fire opinions, heated tweets, and impassioned posts. The nation was divided. On one side, fervent supporters hailed Jessica as a voice of necessary dissent, someone unafraid to confront powerful figures. On the other, critics decried her as unprofessional and irresponsible, arguing that the sanctity of balanced reporting had been irreparably compromised. The initial shock of the moment soon gave way to an all-out media frenzy. Major news outlets such as the New York Times, CNN, and NBC were quick to pick up the story, each launching their own in-depth analyses of the broadcast. Headlines splashed across digital and print media. Liberty News erupts. Jessica Monroe's fiery tirade against Caroline Leavitt stuns nation, and When Passion Meets the News Desk, a closer look at the controversial comment, while opinion pieces flooded editorial pages, dissecting every nuance of the statement and its far-reaching implications for journalistic integrity. Television talk shows and radio programs devoted extensive segments to the incident. In studios across the country, pundits and former journalists engaged in spirited debates about where the line should be drawn between impassioned commentary and overt bias. In today's hyper-connected world, one prominent media analyst remarked during a live discussion on National Public Radio, "Every word is amplified, every emotion scrutinized." Jessica's comment is not just a personal outburst, it's a reflection of the deep-seated frustrations that many feel toward a system that seems increasingly indifferent to accountability. Such statements resonated with a significant segment of the public, many of whom had grown weary of what they perceived as sanitized, overly cautious news presentations that avoided taking a definitive stance on critical issues. Meanwhile, across platforms like Twitter, the incident sparked an unprecedented wave of user-generated content. Hashtags such as #JessicaSpeaksTruth, #StandUpForAmerica, and #Media Accountability began trending, drawing support from a diverse cross-section of the population. Social media influencers, vloggers, and even ordinary citizens took to video responses, live streams, and impassioned blog posts to share their interpretations of the event. In countless households, dinner table discussions were animated by the question: was this the courage of a true journalist or the reckless abandon of a media personality stepping over the professional line? The vigorous online discourse underscored a profound shift in how Americans consumed news in the digital age, where every broadcast moment was not only watched but immediately and passionately debated. Public reaction was not confined solely to the virtual sphere. Across major cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, impromptu gatherings and town hall meetings sprang up as citizens demanded accountability, not only from the controversial figure at the center of the debate, Caroline Leavitt, but also from the media institutions that had given a platform to such incendiary rhetoric. In community centers and public parks, citizens of all ages and backgrounds voiced their opinions, calling for a return to a more thoughtful and measured discourse in journalism. Protest signs, bumper stickers, and even artistic murals began to appear, each bearing messages that questioned whether the current media landscape could truly balance freedom of expression with the need for responsible reporting. Even within the corridors of Liberty News, The fallout was palpable. The storm of public opinion that had erupted online was now mirrored in hushed, anxious conversations among staff members. Veteran reporters and junior interns alike wondered if this digital backlash would irreversibly tarnish the channel's hard-earned reputation. Executives found themselves fielding urgent calls from major advertisers and sponsors, whose own brand images were now under threat by association. A high-ranking executive from a leading technology firm was quoted in a financial magazine stating, "When a media outlet loses its way and allows unchecked emotion to dictate its content, the entire ecosystem suffers. We need assurance that such incidents will not become the norm." The pressure was mounting on every front. As live broadcasts and news tickers continued to update with fresh commentary on the unfolding crisis, Liberty News' public relations team was working feverishly to craft a response that would both acknowledge the concerns of its audience and assert its commitment to journalistic standards. Emergency meetings were convened late into the night, during which senior management debated the appropriate course of action, ranging from issuing an on-air apology to initiating a full internal review of editorial policies. The stakes were high. In an era where every word could spark a nationwide debate within seconds, even a minor misstep could have catastrophic consequences for the network's credibility and financial stability. The public debate soon evolved into a broader national conversation about the role of the media in shaping public opinion and holding power to account. Prominent academics and cultural critics weighed in, arguing that Jessica Monroe's unbridled expression of personal conviction was symptomatic of a larger crisis in American journalism. "We are living in a time when the lines between opinion and fact are increasingly blurred," one distinguished media professor commented in an interview with a leading cable news network. "Every broadcast is a battleground where ideas clash, and the integrity of the institution is measured by its ability to maintain a balance between passionate discourse and objective reporting." This explosion of discussion also prompted several industry conferences and public forums dedicated entirely to the ethics of modern journalism. Panels were assembled to debate the merits and perils of allowing personal emotion to infiltrate live broadcasts. In these discussions, experts stressed the need for news organizations to navigate the fine line between speaking truth to power and succumbing to the temptations of sensationalism. In one particularly memorable forum held in Washington, D.C., a veteran journalist declared, "If we are to trust our news sources, they must not only inform us but also hold themselves to the highest standards of accountability. When those standards are compromised, the very foundation of public trust is at risk." In summary, the immediate aftermath of Jessica Monroe's explosive remark transformed a routine morning broadcast into a nationwide catalyst for debate. The incident transcended the boundaries of traditional media, igniting discussions across social platforms, newsrooms, and living rooms alike. It underscored the profound impact that a single emotionally charged statement could have in an era of instantaneous communication, challenging both the media's responsibility to report objectively and the public's right to demand accountability from those who shape our national discourse. In the wake of Jessica Monroe's incendiary on-air outburst, Liberty News was thrust into an internal maelstrom of urgency and uncertainty. As the shockwaves of the broadcast reverberated through both the public sphere and the upper echelons of management, senior executives at the network immediately convened an emergency crisis meeting in their sleek Manhattan headquarters. The boardroom, with its expansive windows overlooking the bustling city below, became the arena for a series of heated discussions involving top-level managers, legal advisors, public relations experts, and key editorial staff. The objective was clear: to understand how a long-respected journalist could cross the professional line in such a dramatic manner, and to devise a strategy that would protect the station's reputation in the face of mounting external pressures. At the heart of the investigation was an exhaustive review of the broadcast in question. The legal team, led by a seasoned counsel well-versed in media law, painstakingly analyzed every second of the live footage. They examined not only Jessica's words but also the tone, context, and body language that accompanied them. Early findings suggested that while the comment was undeniably provocative, it might have been the culmination of internal frustrations that had been simmering for weeks. Numerous internal memos and emails, now under scrutiny, revealed that concerns had been raised regarding the tone of recent broadcasts, with several staff members cautioning that the network's increasingly impassioned commentary was edging dangerously close to bias. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was tense and electric. Michael Bennett, the network's CEO, a man known for his steely resolve and commitment to maintaining journalistic integrity, addressed the assembled group with a measured yet somber tone. "We are facing a crisis that goes far beyond a single comment," he asserted. "This incident challenges the very principles upon which Liberty News was built. We must conduct a thorough investigation, identify any systemic issues, and ensure that our standards are not compromised by personal grievances or unchecked emotions. His words resonated with everyone present, underscoring the gravity of the situation and the potential long-term ramifications if the matter was not addressed decisively. As the meeting continued, conflicting opinions began to emerge. Some executives defended Jessica's impassioned delivery as an honest expression of the frustrations many Americans felt toward a political establishment that often seemed unresponsive to the people's needs. They argued that her comment, though emotionally charged, was rooted in genuine concern for accountability and transparency. Others, however, maintained that the role of a journalist was to remain impartial, no matter how provocative the circumstances. They warned that allowing personal bias to seep into live reporting would not only erode public trust, but also open the floodgates to legal challenges and reputational damage that could jeopardize the network's future. In a flurry of rapid-fire exchanges, suggestions flew back and forth, some advocating for a temporary suspension of Jessica pending further investigation, while others called for an immediate overhaul of the network's editorial guidelines. Technical staff recalled that in the weeks leading up to the incident, tensions had been mounting. Behind the scenes, small group discussions had hinted at a growing rift between the newsroom's management and its on-air talent. Anonymous emails and confidential memos indicated that several employees had voiced concerns about the increasingly aggressive tone adopted during critical news segments. It became apparent that Jessica's explosive comment was not an isolated lapse in judgment, but rather the climax of a prolonged period of internal discontent. Outside the boardroom, the reverberations of the investigation were felt throughout the entire organization. In the bustling corridors of the Liberty News headquarters, hushed conversations broke out among staffers as they tried to piece together the events that had led to the crisis. Journalists who had once admired Jessica's tenacity now exchanged worried glances, uncertain about how the unfolding drama would affect their own careers. Even the junior production assistants, who typically worked behind the scenes with little awareness of the high-stakes decisions made in executive meetings, sensed that something momentous was happening, a tipping point that could redefine the future of the network. Every interaction, every whispered conversation in the break room, carried an undercurrent of anxiety. Employees, many of whom had dedicated years to the station and had weathered previous controversies, now found themselves questioning the stability of the very institution they had helped build. The internal investigation took on an almost existential quality. It was no longer just about addressing a single on-air comment but about re-evaluating the principles of freedom of expression and the delicate balance between personal conviction and professional duty. In late-night emails and after-hours meetings, staff debated whether the network's long-held commitment to progressive, hard-hitting journalism was now at odds with the ethical standards required to maintain public trust. Amidst this internal turmoil, senior management received a steady stream of external communications, from major advertisers, political figures, and media watchdog groups, all demanding swift action. A renowned media analyst, speaking on a primetime cable news program, warned that the incident could set a dangerous precedent for the industry if left unaddressed. When the line between opinion and objective reporting becomes blurred, he cautioned, the entire fabric of our democratic discourse is at risk. Such public statements only serve to heighten the pressure on Liberty News leadership, forcing them to navigate a labyrinth of legal, ethical, and commercial considerations. In the midst of the growing storm, Michael Bennett's determination to restore order never wavered. He reiterated that while the investigation must be comprehensive and impartial, the network's priority was to uphold the integrity of its journalism. Our viewers deserve nothing less than the highest standards, he declared in one of the final sessions of the day. If we fail to act decisively now, we risk not only our reputation but the very trust that has sustained us for decades. His words echoed in the minds of everyone present, marking the beginning of a painstaking process to unearth the root causes of the crisis and to implement reforms that would prevent such incidents from recurring in the future. Thus, the internal investigation at Liberty News became a microcosm of a broader struggle, one that pitted the raw passion of individual expression against the institutional demands of ethical journalism. In those tense, fraught hours, every piece of evidence, every whispered testimony, and every internal email contributed to a narrative that was as much about the future of media as it was about one woman's moment of uncontrollable emotion. And as the night wore on and the discussions grew ever more impassioned, it became clear that the consequences of that fateful broadcast would soon extend far beyond the confines of the studio, reshaping not only the destiny of Jessica Monroe but also the very identity of Liberty News. As the crisis deepened and internal investigations continued, Liberty News found itself increasingly besieged by external pressures from sponsors, advertisers, and influential public figures. The morning after Jessica Monroe's controversial broadcast, the network's executive offices were inundated with urgent phone calls and formal letters from major corporate partners. Long-standing sponsors, whose brands have been closely associated with the network's reputation for bold and unbiased journalism, now expressed grave concerns that the incendiary comment could irreparably damage their own public images. In boardrooms across America, from the glass towers of New York to the modern business centers in Chicago and Los Angeles, executives debated how best to respond to a situation that threatened to upend years of carefully cultivated trust. One of the first official statements came from a leading technology corporation, which issued a press release stating, "We stand for integrity and balanced reporting. While we respect the value of free expression, we cannot support media practices that compromise our shared commitment to accountability." This pronouncement, widely circulated in business magazines and online financial news sites, served as a wake-up call for the network's leadership. Within hours, other sponsors echoed similar sentiments, urging Liberty News to take swift and decisive corrective action. The pressure was unrelenting. Every delay, every sign of indecision, only served to heighten the risk of losing lucrative contracts and long-term partnerships. Inside the Liberty News headquarters, the mood was one of urgent reckoning. Senior executives, already reeling from the internal fallout, now had to contend with a cascade of external demands. The crisis management team, comprising legal advisors, public relations specialists, and senior managers, was mobilized at an unprecedented pace to devise a strategy that would placate the sponsors while preserving the network's core values. In a series of high-stakes meetings held in a private conference room overlooking Manhattan skyline, discussions ranged from issuing a public apology on behalf of the network to implementing an immediate review of the editorial policies that had permitted such an emotionally charged broadcast. A particularly tense moment unfolded when a representative from one of the nation's top financial institutions, known for its conservative approach to corporate partnerships, sternly warned, "Liberty News credibility is the cornerstone of our investment strategy. If we cannot be assured that your content will meet professional standards, we will have no choice but to reevaluate our long-standing relationship." Such statements were not mere rhetoric. They signaled a potential cascade of contract terminations that could threaten the network's financial viability. In response, the crisis team drafted proposals to tighten internal controls, increase oversight on live broadcasts, and even consider restructuring the newsroom to better separate opinion from objective reporting. Simultaneously, the external media landscape was buzzing with analysis of the unfolding drama. Competing networks seized the opportunity to highlight their own adherence to traditional journalistic standards, implicitly contrasting themselves with Liberty News' apparent lapse. Television segments and online articles began speculating on the long-term impact of the controversy on ratings and public trust. In today's cutthroat media environment, one misstep can trigger a domino effect, noted a seasoned industry insider on a primetime talk show. The question now is whether Liberty News can regain its footing before the damage becomes irreversible. Amid this corporate and public maelstrom, the internal debates at Liberty News intensified. Within the newsroom, there was a growing divide between those who advocated for unwavering adherence to the principles of free expression and those who argued that the network must prioritize stability and investor confidence. In whispered conversations by the water cooler and in heated discussions during lunch breaks, staff members pondered whether the passion that had defined their approach to journalism was now undermining the very credibility they had worked so hard to build. "We are storytellers, not revolutionaries," one senior reporter was overheard saying, "and if we let our personal feelings dictate our broadcasts, we risk turning news into mere spectacle." This tension was further compounded by the reality of modern corporate partnerships. Major advertisers, sensitive to shifts in public sentiment and market volatility, were increasingly demanding not only transparency but also a demonstrable commitment to ethical standards. The crisis had revealed vulnerabilities in the network's operational framework, and sponsors were quick to seize on these weaknesses as justification for demanding sweeping changes. In several closed-door meetings with corporate partners, representatives made it clear that the future of their sponsorship depended on a clear message from Liberty News, that such a breach of protocol would never happen again. As the day progressed, it became evident that the network's leadership was caught between two competing imperatives. On one hand was the ideal of fearless, unfiltered journalism that had defined Liberty News for decades. On the other, the stark economic realities of maintaining corporate partnerships in an era where every broadcast could trigger a social media firestorm. The executive team found itself grappling with a paradox: how to preserve the integrity of the newsroom while appeasing an increasingly anxious business community. Every decision, from the tone of internal communications to the structure of forthcoming press conferences, was weighed against the potential fallout in both the court of public opinion and the boardroom. In an effort to stem the tide of corporate discontent, the network's public relations department launched a series of carefully curated briefings designed to reassure stakeholders. High-ranking executives, including CEO Michael Bennett, appeared on national financial news programs to outline a roadmap for reform, emphasizing plans for enhanced editorial oversight, mandatory ethics training for on-air talent, and a renewed commitment to balancing passion with professionalism. Yet, even as these measures were announced, there remained an undercurrent of uncertainty. The sponsors' demands were clear: without visible, rapid change, the once stable partnerships that had long bolstered Liberty News might soon crumble under the weight of public and corporate scrutiny. Beyond the boardrooms and PR briefings, the escalating conflict found its echo in the broader cultural discourse. Public forums, industry conferences, and academic panels began to focus on the intricate relationship between media freedom and corporate responsibility. Scholars argued that in an era defined by the instantaneous spread of information and viral outrage, news organizations needed to innovate ways to remain both daring and disciplined. "We must learn from this moment," one prominent media theorist declared at a symposium in Washington, D.C., that the vibrancy of free expression cannot come at the cost of accountability and fiscal stability. In this charged environment, the future of Liberty News hung in the balance. The pressure from sponsors was not simply a matter of balancing budgets, it was a challenge to the very identity of the network. Every conversation, every strategic meeting, every public statement was imbued with the urgency of a company fighting for its survival in an increasingly unforgiving media landscape. And as the day gave way to night, with more partners voicing their concerns and more headlines warning of an impending crisis, it became unmistakably clear: the decisions made in those tense hours would not only determine the fate of Jessica Monroe but would also reshape the future of Liberty News in an era where the clash between passion and propriety was more relevant than ever. After several days of relentless internal conflict, mounting external pressure, and an atmosphere charged with both public outrage and corporate anxiety, the leadership at Liberty News reached a decision that would irrevocably alter the course of its future. The events following Jessica Monroe's explosive broadcast had taken on a momentum of their own, leaving the network scrambling to repair its reputation and reassert its commitment to journalistic integrity. In the midst of this chaos, every executive, legal advisor, and public relations specialist worked around the clock to evaluate the long-term implications of the incident and to formulate a response that could stem the tide of criticism and investor concern. At the heart of the decision was the understanding that the network's credibility, the very asset that had allowed Liberty News to thrive for decades, was now in jeopardy. In a series of marathon meetings held in the late hours at the headquarters in Manhattan, the board of directors pored over the evidence. Internal emails that hinted at long-simmering tensions, confidential memos warning of potential breaches in protocol, and the now infamous video clip that captured Jessica's unfiltered emotional outburst. Legal advisors warned that the incident not only exposed the network to potential defamation lawsuits from Caroline Leavitt's camp, but also risked undermining the contractual obligations that had long kept major sponsors at bay. Amid these deliberations, CEO Michael Bennett took a decisive stance. In a formal meeting that brought together the entire senior management team, he stated unequivocally, "Our viewers, our partners, and our legacy demand that we hold ourselves to the highest standards of professionalism and accountability. While we appreciate the passion that drives our journalism, there comes a time when personal expression must yield to the greater good of the organization." His words, delivered with a mix of resolve and regret, resonated deeply with everyone present. It was clear that a turning point had been reached. The network could no longer afford to let individual fervor overshadow its institutional responsibilities. By the following morning, an official statement was issued on Liberty News website and disseminated to all employees, sponsors, and media outlets. The statement announced that, after thorough review and consultation with legal and human resources experts, the decision had been made to terminate Jessica Monroe's employment with immediate effect. In the formal communiqué, the network stressed that the action was not motivated by personal animus but was instead a necessary measure to protect the integrity of Liberty News and to ensure that all on-air content adhered to the highest ethical standards. "We regret that events have unfolded in such a manner," the statement read, "but in light of recent developments and the imperative to preserve public trust, the decision to part ways with Ms. Monroe has been made with the utmost seriousness." For Jessica, the dismissal marked a profound personal and professional turning point. In an exclusive interview with an independent journalist later that day, she admitted that her on-air remarks had been fueled by an overwhelming surge of emotion, a reaction born not only from her own frustrations but also from a deep-seated disillusionment with the systemic issues she had witnessed over the years. "I spoke from the heart," she said. her voice tinged with both sorrow and defiance, "and I never intended for my words to cause such upheaval. I believed I was holding those in power accountable, but I now understand that in doing so, I crossed a line that the institution could not ignore." Her candid confession struck a chord with many former supporters, who found themselves torn between admiration for her uncompromising honesty and regret over the personal cost of her impassioned stance. The fallout from Jessica's dismissal rippled far beyond the newsroom. On the business front, several key sponsors, longtime partners whose confidence had wavered in the wake of the controversy, issued statements expressing cautious optimism that Liberty News' swift action would help restore stability. Major corporations, including financial institutions and technology giants, reaffirmed their commitment to the network, emphasizing that decisive leadership was essential for rebuilding trust in turbulent times. Yet, even as some partners signaled their support, others remained wary, hinting that the loss of a high-profile figure like Jessica Monroe could have long-term repercussions for the network's ratings and overall market position. Within Liberty News, the decision to dismiss Jessica Monroe set off a period of introspection and reorganization. In the days that followed, the network initiated a comprehensive review of its editorial policies and operational protocols. Mandatory ethics training sessions were scheduled for all employees, and a new oversight committee was established to ensure that future broadcasts would adhere to a balanced mix of passionate reporting and objective journalism. These measures were not only designed to prevent another incident of this magnitude, but also to reaffirm the network's commitment to its founding principles. For many staff members, the episode served as a stark reminder that even the most dedicated journalists must balance the impulse to speak truth to power with the imperative of maintaining professional decorum. At the same time, public reaction to the dismissal was as varied as it was intense. In editorial columns, op-eds, and online forums, commentators debated whether the network's decision was a necessary step towards safeguarding its reputation or an overreaction that threatened to stifle journalistic freedom. Some hailed the move as a bold affirmation of accountability, a signal that no one, regardless of their prominence or passion, was above the standards that the public expected from its news sources. Others mourned the loss of a journalist who had, in their view, epitomized the courage to challenge the status quo, arguing that her departure would create a chilling effect on future on-air expression. This division of opinion only served to amplify the broader conversation about the evolving role of the media in an era where every spoken word is subject to instantaneous and widespread scrutiny. In the weeks that followed, the ramifications of the dismissal began to take shape. Analysts noted that Liberty News' swift and unambiguous action appeared to stem the immediate outflow of advertiser confidence, yet the incident had already cast a long shadow over the network's long-term reputation. Discussions in industry panels and academic circles revolved around the notion that the events leading to Jessica Monroe's termination were emblematic of a larger crisis in modern media, one where the boundaries between personal expression and institutional responsibility had become dangerously blurred. Conferences on media ethics featured heated debates on whether such incidents could eventually force a recalibration of journalistic norms across the industry. For Jessica herself, the dismissal marked not only the end of a storied career at Liberty News, but also the beginning of a period of profound personal reckoning. In subsequent interviews, she expressed a deep sense of regret mixed with a steadfast commitment to her beliefs. "I believed in the power of the truth," she said, "but I now see that the truth must be delivered with care and responsibility. I'm not sure what comes next, but I intend to continue fighting for what I believe is right, even if that means doing so from outside the confines of a traditional newsroom." Her words resonated with a generation of journalists and activists who saw in her the embodiment of a noble yet precarious quest for justice in a complex and rapidly changing world. Ultimately, the dismissal of Jessica Monroe became a watershed moment for Liberty News and for American journalism as a whole. It was a decision born out of necessity, a calculated response to an incident that had threatened to unravel the fabric of public trust. And while the network embarked on an arduous journey of reform and reconciliation, the echoes of that fateful day continued to spark debate about the price of free expression in an era defined by digital immediacy and relentless scrutiny. As Liberty News redefined its editorial policies and sought to regain its footing in a fractured media landscape, one lesson remained clear: in today's fast-paced world, every word spoken on live television carries with it not only the weight of personal conviction but also the immense responsibility of shaping public discourse.